This presentation of the Teacher Liability Protection Act is presented to the staff at Otis Bison. This presentation is done by myself, Stan Avey, in partial fulfillment of EDL 850 requirements. I believe one of the greatest issues that teachers face, whether it be their first year or even veteran teachers, is the issue regarding liability. Now, not that I know this firsthand, and I'm fortunate, but PE teachers, compared to other teachers, are the ones most oftenly named in lawsuits. And this video is going to provide information to the staff at Otis Bison, preferably the younger teachers, regarding the Teacher Liability Protection Act and how to keep your name out of the newspaper for legal issues. The Elementary and Secondary Act was signed by President George Bush on January the 8th, 2002. Included in this act, as it is so called, is the Paul D. Coverdale Teacher Protection Act of 2001, or the Teacher Protection Liability Act, in which I'll refer to it as. This piece of legislation began after onslaughts of lawsuits against teachers began happening and thus became a burden for the court system. This act took effect on April 8, 2002. So what is the Teacher Protection Liability Act? This is legislation that protects employees of within a learning environment, such as our K-12 building, from frivolous lawsuits. Educators are able to undertake reasonable action to maintain order, to discipline without fear of litigation, and to maintain an appropriate learning environment. Something that is mandated by this act is risk management training for employees, including how to prevent false accusations and how to de-escalate certain interactions that could be hostile. The Teacher Protection Liability Act protects them against any punitive damages brought forth by parents and students. Now, keep in mind that teachers are not the only ones protected by this act. This would also include administrators and other school professionals, including school board members. Keep in mind that this act only applies to states that receive Title I funds for education, which I believe all states do. What are some highlights of the Teacher Protection Liability Act? Well, number one, teachers are protected from punitive damages if they act within the scope of their employment. Obviously, the teacher has three specific duties specified by the courts. They are to instruct, to supervise, and provide for the safety of students. In loco parentis, or in place of parents, does come in play here as spelled out by the courts. And since we do take the place of parents in an educational setting, that would come to play here. Number two, teachers are protected from punitive damages if the actions were in accordance to federal, state, and local laws. For example, if corporal punishment is banned by a certain state, then that teacher would be liable and prosecuted if he or she used this as a means of a form of punishment. Number three, teachers are protected from punitive damages if the teacher acted to further control discipline or to maintain order in a classroom or school. In the case of bullying, the teacher would be liable if he or she did not do anything to stop the particular bullying if they knew that it was happening. Number four, teachers are protected from punitive damages if that teacher was properly licensed or certified. Hopefully, all the teachers in the school district are properly licensed in their areas of instruction. Number five, teachers are protected from punitive damages if the harm was not caused by the teacher's operation of a motor vehicle, vessel, or aircraft carrier. I don't believe any of us drive around an aircraft carrier, so I think we're okay there. But it's important that you do not use your own vehicle to transport students, since you wouldn't be covered by the act. And number six, teachers are protected from punitive damages if there were not clear evidence that the harm was caused by any criminal misconduct or negligence by the teacher. So what if the lawsuit is over something that was caused by the negligence of the teacher, or something that's called torts? It's not a pastry, it's not a tart, nothing you eat, but according to Essex, a tort is an actionable or civil wrong committed against one person by another, independent of contract. A tort may involve liability affecting school personnel, involving a teacher, a principal, or even a school board member, depending on the circumstance. Plain and simple, a tort is committed when an act you perform or fail to perform violates someone's rights. Torts can be classified as intentional or unintentional. An intentional tort is a deliberate act committed against one person. Intentional torts would include assault, battery, defamation, false imprisonment, trespass to personal injury. The difference between assault and battery is that with assault, there is an attempt to physically injure a person or create a feeling of fear and apprehension of injury, something of what happens frequently with bullying. Battery is an intentional tort that results from physical contact, such as perhaps a fight. Unintentional torts, or negligence torts, is when someone does something or perhaps fails to do something that leads to injury that is neither expected nor intended. We know negligence refers to failing to do something that a reasonable person would have done under the same circumstance. For a teacher to be guilty of negligence, 4 elements must be considered. Number 1, was duty present? Every teacher has a legal responsibility to their students. We must possess certain skills and knowledge that is expected to us from the parents and from this community. Number 2, was there a breach of legal duty? Did my action cause an infraction within my scope of responsibility? I'm not a good swimmer. I couldn't teach anyone to swim. So I probably shouldn't be instructing kids how to swim. But if I did, and harm or death occurred, I would be held liable. Number 3, was there harm or injury? If there is no harm or injury, there's probably no negligence. Number 4, was the breach of duty the cause of the injury? Was the injury caused by a breach of duty by the teacher? I think of proper supervision as an example. Was the teacher talking to another teacher? And if so, could that teacher have prevented the injury from happening? A couple of examples that come to mind here is one day in a physical education class, and it wasn't my class, wasn't even this district, wasn't even this state, but a student had forgotten his gym shoes. After a discussion with the teacher, he was allowed to participate in that lesson. During the activity, the student tripped and fell and broke a toe. That injury resulted in a lawsuit against the PE teacher and the school district for negligence. Another example, students are unable or unwilling to follow safety-related rules or demonstrate reasonable and prudent conduct. This person was allowed to enter the laboratory and thus participate. An injury was caused to this person, and the teacher was also held liable. We touched briefly of what wasn't covered by the Act and some more examples. Physical threats. Liability protection does not include a crime for violence for which a teacher has been convicted. If the threat involves a sexual offense or involves the school employee under the influence of drugs and alcohol, that individual would be liable and not protected under the Teacher Liability Protection Act. Sexual misconduct. School employee engaging in sexual relations with a student also isn't covered by the Teacher Liability Protection Act. Rarely do children falsely accuse the adult in these circumstances. Other examples include a student hurt in a playground accident, a student injured during a chemistry lab experiment, students beaten up by other students with the teacher knowing it happened and not doing anything about it, a student injured in shop class, assaulted on a field trip, or sexually harassed by his or her peers with the teacher knowing it happened and not taking any action. That would make the teacher liable and therefore not protected under the Act. As stated above, the Teacher Liability Protection Act protects school employees against frivolous lawsuits when they take reasonable actions against students to maintain order and discipline. I think it's important to review information found in the school handbook regarding discipline. The behavior expected from students is a combination of common courtesy and safety considerations. We try to maintain an environment that is conducive to learning. Students will be treated with respect and are expected to show others the same respect. The Board of Education have approved the school-wide discipline plan, which addresses inappropriate behaviors in a consistent and fair manner. Parents are asked to read the school-wide discipline plan and encouraged to discuss with their child. The parent, along with the child, then signs the attached letter confirming that they have read the plan and understand the consequences. Finally, here are some suggestions that's important that you as an educator can do that maybe helps prevent injury and hopefully keeps your name out of the newspaper. Number one, protect the safety, health, and welfare of our students. That's what the parents, they send their kids to school, and that is our job to teach, to supervise, and protect them. Number two, foresee the reasonable consequences of your students' actions. Number three, be in the classroom and attentive while activities are in progress. Not out in the hallway, not in the teacher's lounge getting coffee, eating donuts, not up in the copy room. Number four, instruct your students the proper use of equipment. Number five, carefully instruct your students about the risks involved in the activities. Number six, modify such instruction to compensate for the age and maturity level of the students. Number seven, maintain appropriate behavior. Number eight, immediately address or report hazardous conditions and the equipment. If you see something that's broken and that could be hazardous, be sure you tell the custodian, tell the principal. Finally, document, especially in this day of age. That ends our presentation. I'd like to thank you for your attendance.